Hi, everyone, and welcome to this video about the common mistakes that people make on the IELTS reading test. The reading test is an important part of the IELTS exam, and it can be challenging, especially if you're not familiar with the types of questions that you'll encounter. In this video, we'll be discussing some common mistakes that people make on the IELTS reading test, and we'll provide some tips and strategies for how to avoid them. Mistake 1. Not reading the instructions carefully. One of the most common mistakes that people make on the IELTS reading test is not reading the instructions carefully. Mistake 2. Spending too much time on one question. Another common mistake that people make on the IELTS reading test is spending too much time on one question. Mistake 3. Not reading the passage carefully. Another common mistake is not reading the passage carefully. The reading passages on the IELTS test can be long and complex, and it's important to read them carefully in order to understand the information and answer the questions correctly. If you skim the passage or read it too quickly, you may miss important details and make mistakes. Mistake 4. Not using the headings to guide your reading. The headings in the IELTS reading passages are there for a reason, and it's important to use them to guide your reading. The headings can give you an idea of what each section of the passage is about, and they can help you find the information you need to answer the questions. If you don't use the headings, you may waste time searching for information that isn't relevant to the question. Mistake 5. Not checking your answers carefully. Finally, it's important to check your answers carefully before you submit your test. One of the common mistakes that people make is not checking their answers, which can result in simple mistakes that could have been avoided. Make sure to check your spelling, grammar, and punctuation, and double-check that you've answered all of the questions. Thanks for watching this video about the common mistakes that people make on the IELTS reading test.